Welcome to the CITIcares Small Business Academy, presented by CitiTrends and the law firm of Seyfarth Shaw. In this 6-episode series, we explore what it takes to start a successful business designing or manufacturing products for retail sale. Welcome to the second session in the 2021 CITIcares Small Business Academy. Work the plan the work, effective business planning. Our presenters today are Mary Walker of CitiTrends and Moses Harris of Wells Fargo.
Welcome to the 2021 CITIcares Small Business Academy, Session 2. I'd like to begin our session today, Work the plan the work, effective business planning. Our guest today is Moses Harris of Wells Fargo. Moses, would you care to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the work that CitiTrends is doing, and I'm excited to be here. My name is Moses Harris. I am a team member at Wells Fargo. I lead our African American diverse segments division within commercial banking, and I've been working at the bank for quite some time. And I'm happy to share a little bit about my experience and what I've seen in the market from some of our great borrowers.
All right, awesome. We very much appreciate the experience that you're lending us here today. And hopefully it can lead to some money being lent in the future. So with that, let's talk a little bit about our subject here. Tell me about the benefit of having a business plan, just for the entrepreneur's own purpose. Why do you need to write this down?
Well, I think a business plan really provides a roadmap to the future. I'll ask our listeners to imagine living in a house that wasn't built with the blueprint. Someone just woke up one day, it's like, yeah, I just want to build a house, or flying in an airport that doesn't have air traffic control, right? You really want structure and in a well thought out plan to really help you identify what you're aiming to do, the pros, the cons, the research. It really gives you an opportunity to have a document and take that document to be stress tested by consultants, by scored counselors, by other business owners, by some of the smartest people around you. And it's hard to do that when you don't have a document. And the last thing I'll say, why I think, just as we started the conversation, why business plans are important, is because it speaks to the level of discipline and it speaks to your commitment to the process. It's like the first step to getting married to this next phase of your life. It's like the engagement ring, so to speak.
I like that analogy. And that kind of calls to mind, I think most people have at some point or other in their lives thought, gee, I'd love to have a little bakery or a little business doing this or that or the other. But most of those people don't have those businesses.
That's right.
And having that plan is essential to going from just the dream, which everybody has, out to a plan, which not everybody has a plan.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's okay, Mary. I think dreaming is what life is all about. You're supposed to dream, right? But the thing about writing a business plan is it's free. It's free. And you don't really have to take a risk. So let's say you want to open up a manufacturing plant, or you want to, produce widgets to sell to a larger retailer. Well, before you buy any inventory or go out and lease equipment, which costs money, writing out who your customer potentially may be, where you might source it from. You can pick up the phone and call 15 different vendors, maybe interview a couple folks. That's all free, without taking on any financial risk. And I really think that at the end of that process, you'll get a lot more clarity. It's like, I think I feel better as a dream. Or you get more commitment and conviction around what you want to do. Or even better, you find your niche in the market. You find where, oh, no one's actually servicing this piece, and I can find a home there. So I think there's more pros of writing a business plan than there are cons. And Mary, if I may, I'll add one more piece.
Absolutely.
I tend to think about there are folks that just like to go the organic route.
Mm-hmm.
And some of our more seasoned entrepreneurs, they may say, nah, you don't really need a business plan because once you get in business, things change. And I agree. You know, no one could have predicted what happened last year with COVID. No one, right? However, you know, folks pivoted. But what I like to, you know, argue or submit for our listeners' consideration is the greatest athletes from Tom Brady to Michael Jordan to Michael Phelps to Serena Williams, they all have game plans. Mm-hmm. They all have game plans. Our Hall of Famers, they've never played a game without a game plan. We take our lessons from the pros, even our public companies. They all have game plans and business plans to present to their investors, to present to the board of directors, to present to their team. Because it's just a form of communication that gets these ideas out of your head on paper and says, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3. And if things pivot and if things happen during the game, you're able to go back to the baseline. Okay, they came out in cover 3. We expected them to come out in cover 2. But okay, we can go back. Instead of running an out route, we'll just run a seam. So you just have a baseline as opposed to being complete chaos. I hope that analogy is helpful.
Right, and that kind of brings to mind, I mean, when you're with a pro ball team, you have practice and practice and practice and practice. But sometimes with a small business, there's no practice. You just have to take that leap of faith and do it. And the plan is all the preparation you get. So that's another value.
And we'll get into this later on in the conversation. But with when you're bringing up practice, that's where our prior experience comes into play, mm-hmm. right? So I believe the statistic is entrepreneurs that have prior experience, their probability of success goes up by 40%, especially folks that have managed in that particular industry. It doesn't mean that you do it. Like if you wanted to go and open up a bake shop, or if you wanted to, you know, get into apparel or something, you can't do it. But the idea is to get practice reps in before you jump in there. And then we document those practice reps and what you learn from practice with the business plan.
Mm-hmm. And kind of continuing on that sports metaphor, you've got a team. Most people who are starting a business have family support, the support of their partners, a business partner perhaps. It seems like they're taking a real trust moment with you. You got to repay that trust by being prepared and doing everything you can to honor that commitment they're making to you.
That's absolutely right, Mary. Absolutely right. I mean, as a small business owner and as a business owner, there's just a lot of responsibility that comes into play. There's a lot of trust, whether you're taking on debt, whether it's a credit card or whether it's a small business loan or it's a lease, or you have employees, they are leaning on you to ensure that payroll's made every 2 weeks with your investors. And so there is a team aspect to business. Some experts say that business is the ultimate team sport, especially if you want to scale over the long term. You can't do it by yourself. It's impossible. And so having written documentation of where you want to take the business is central to keeping the team aligned and on the same page. and a document is really, really helpful. It's not the only way, but it is a great way to do it.
And that kind of brings to mind issues of mission creep, the enemy of the entrepreneur.
That's right.
It's got to be tempting when you're out there and you know you're good at doing a certain thing. You know you've got the original dream to do that, and somebody comes to you with, well, maybe you could expand. Maybe you could add this extra line.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you use your business plan to evaluate whether that's a good choice or not such a good choice?
Well, that speaks to the efficacy and the strength of your research, your initial research. When you go out and you decide, I want to open up in this specific location, or I want to target this industry for, these reasons, or I have a competitive advantage through technology, or whatever your niche is, you have to do a whole bunch of research that speaks to and that leads to your conviction in this particular space. And it just takes time. It takes commitment and persistence. And that's how we start to see you making change over time. And as the new sparkly little thing comes into the market, you do have a tendency to like, oh, what's over there? But when, again, going back to your research and where you kind of started, it speaks to, bring you back home to your home base and helps you avoid mission creep. Now, mission creep can't be confused with evolution and evolving and pivoting, right? If your initial investment thesis isn't working, okay, we have to pivot, but you have to ensure that you've given enough time, that you've given enough effort, and making sure that the market has to know about you. If you're only open for 5 days, well, you got to let it cook a little bit longer. But if the fundamental underlying thesis is broken, like, okay, we have to pivot. So Moses, how do you know if it's broken? Well, if there's material shifts in the market, if there's material shifts in the industry, and if the leading experts and the leading your competitors, if they're struggling and they're not able to have sales growth, okay, that speaks to that's the trigger for you to do more research and figure out, like, okay, is this just a short-term blip, or is this a fatal flaw in the industry? For example, digital cameras versus Kodak and printing cameras, like, oh wow, or Nokia cell phones versus the iPhone. Oh, digital watch versus the Switch watch, right? So those are really big industry trends. It says, well, I don't think people are watching cable TV anymore. I think people are actually watching TV on their phone. So that is a big industry shift that requires a pivot. That's very different than mission creep.
What happens if you have an entrepreneur coming asking for a loan without a business plan?
Well, we are always going to encourage our borrowers to have a presentation or a business plan as to what they want to do. I'd say that's step one. Step one. Again, it speaks to the character of the borrower, and it also speaks to the authenticity and the discipline that the entrepreneur is going to bring to repaying the loan. You have to remember, as a lender, we don't have a long track record, especially if you're getting started. We don't have a long track record of repayment history with you specifically, especially if it's a new venture. So anything that you can do to enhance us getting to know you better, that helps. So I would say step one would be bringing a well thought through, well vetted business plan. And the second is having your business plan being co-signed by a score counselor or another executive in your industry, or a business consultant that's either known by the bank or that can really speak to the authenticity of the industry.
So let's talk a little bit about the specific contents of a business plan. Are there elements you're looking for in a plan that you think demonstrate that the person is looking at all the right places and asking all the right questions?
Absolutely. I first want to say that every business presents different nuances, and there's different areas where you want to lean in and explain certain things. But the core of the business plan components are pretty consistent across industries. We want to know your story. We want to know what's your experience in the industry. And if you per se don't have the experience, who on your team is bringing the experience that's going to help this venture be successful? Who are your investors in this venture? So that's what we call the management side. We want to know about the product. What are you selling? How is it going to be produced? How much is it going to cost you? We want to know about the market and the industry. Tell us about the research. Have that laid out and where you fit in the market. This is common. We just see folks in their business plan say, "Oh, this industry is growing by 2% through 2030." It's like, okay, that's true, but how do you specifically plan to leverage that, and where do you fit in that industry? And of course, we want to see the time that it'll take for you to break even and to make a profit. And that is a huge component. And we want to see realistic break-even numbers. So some folks kind of have 30% growth, in the first 6 months. Well, that may or may not be true, depending on who your customers are. So we also want to know who you plan to sell to and how you plan to compete. And Mary, I believe we're going to dive in there a little bit further. So I'll suspend my comments.
You read my mind. We are going to touch on all of that. I think all of it deserves a good close look. Let's start at the very beginning, talking a little bit about the summary, the executive summary of this document. How should an executive summary prioritize information? What's the key element you need there?
Yeah, the executive summary should be really brief. It should be just kind of like you're picking up a book, just on the back of a book. What are you trying to do? Who are you? What are you trying to do? Kind of your path to profitability. Who's on your team? And that's pretty much it. And then that just gives us an overview of what we're going to dive into in the broader business plan.
Because it's in its own way a part of the marketing too. You want to leave your customer or your lender looking for more, ready to turn the page and see that next chapter.
That's right. That's exactly right, Mary.
Okay, so when you do start filling in the details, tell me a little bit about the market issues and the research and analysis that are helpful there.
Well, Mary, I feel like this is probably the top 3 most important components of a business plan. Number 1, I'd say it's the people who's going to operate the business, hands down. That's always number 1. And then number 2, I'd probably say it is the market, because you can have the best product in the world, but if the market's not ready for it, or if the market doesn't want it, or there's too many of them in the market, then the probability of the venture being successful is going to be limited. And when you do your market research and analysis, you will begin to find how you're going to compete. So if you're going to compete on quality, like, okay, great. So how are you going to source it? Can the market handle a higher priced item? Are you going to compete on convenience? Are you going to compete on customer service? Are you going to be a low cost provider? Are you going to compete based on just pure niche? Like, this is the only product out here. Are you going to compete just like what we call a similarity, kind of like gas? You know, there's a Shell gas station, there's a Chevron gas station. You know, and it's a complementary product. And so the more that you dive into the market, and again, it's industry by industry and niche by niche, you really want to delve really deep into how you're going to be specifically positioned in your specific market. I believe our audience members are focused on manufacturing. And so it's really important to understand the cost component of your input cost. So if you're making metal widgets, it's very important to understand the supply chain aspect of metal widgets. Who are the top providers? What's the long-term, what has been the price trend over the last 10 years? And how have your competitors kind of managed that price? Are your customers okay accepting that price increase? Or do you, as the manufacturer, do you have to eat that price? And again, understanding what your customer needs and what your customer wants. So you don't want to produce a 15-inch widget if the industry is moving to a 10-inch widget. You're already obsolete. So you want to make sure that your business is scaling in the right towards the future and not towards products of yesterday.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And I think there's a term here that might be worth explaining a little bit. Tell me how this fits in with the concept of total addressable market, or TAM.
This speaks to your market size. So if you are in the city of Savannah, well, let's just pick a specific industry, like let's say you're opening up a coffee shop, and you want to know how many customers are going to visit your coffee shop in a particular day. So that will be the total potential for customers. Would it be the whole population of the city? Probably not, because all those folks aren't going to come to your store. Would it be the folks that live in a 2-mile radius, a 5-mile radius? That's probably a little closer, but probably the heart for a coffee shop will be a 1-mile radius, right? And you want to get the population size, and you want to probably eliminate children, because children probably aren't going to drink coffee. And so let's say you get to 15,000 residents, you know, in a 1-mile radius. So that will be your TAM. And you can even reduce your TAM by demographics. So you have some low income, you have some high income, and you want to figure out who you're specifically gonna target. Are you going to target convenience? So folks that are the commuter traffic. Are you going to focus on the local residents that may work from home, right? And so that's the importance of identifying your TAM, because you can really get really niche and break down who you're actually going to target. And in business, especially small business, I believe your probability of success increases the more specific that you become, and you really get to know your customer. Again, what does your customer need and what does your customer want? And you want to make sure that your business solves that problem.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier about the number one priority that you saw for a business plan would be to introduce your leadership, introduce your management. What kind of balance are you looking for there between your personal story and your professional story?
Well, I think both are relevant. You want to really identify and communicate what personal skills, what professional skills that are going to help this venture be successful. So as you are authoring and writing this business plan, you have to be mindful of who your audience is, right? So is it as relevant where you were born and where you went to high school? Well, it depends. If you're selling high school football jerseys in San Diego and you grew up in San Diego, you were born in San Diego, yeah, that's really relevant because you know all the high school coaches, the mascots, and yeah, that's really, really important. But if you're, making widgets for rocket ships, I don't think that's relevant at all. Right? So if you have a specific degree, if you have a specific certification, if you worked in an industry for 10 years or for 15 years, or if your family has had a specific business or influence on an industry, that's really, really important to communicate. And taking that a step further, you want to communicate who is doing this work with you. So we call that our leadership. And yes, it is about product innovation and product development. It's also about sales and marketing. Sales and marketing is very, very important because we have to have ability to grow our top line. Right? At the end of the day, we can manage expenses all day long, but you have to continue to grow the top line. I also think that over the next, actually, it's really important now, but over the next 5 to 10 years, I believe that a chief technology officer is central to the success of your business. We have to start figuring out how technology is going to advance, whether it's through automation, whether it's through digitizing your website or the ordering process or the fulfillment process. I know where our audience is manufacturing oriented, but your supply chain can't have papers and receipts. You really need a tracking system to know where your inventory is at all times. I also think you need a finance person. So that's accounts receivables and accounts payable. Someone needs to manage that. That's one of the challenges that I've seen with small business owners. Often they're just so focused on the sale and forget about the collection piece. So you're selling into larger retailers. Sometimes they can stretch you on your payments where it's 120 days. Sometimes it's 90 days. Well, as a small business, that's the lifeblood that you have to collect. And Miss Business Owner, if you are just focused on sales, marketing, employees, and you forget about collection, well, your cash flow is going to be a little tight. So that's also something very central to communicate in your business plan. And the last thing I'll say on that is legal and regulation. Depending on your industry, you really need to have access to a legal consultant or a regulatory consultant that can help you identify really important trends that you need to be on top of in the legal community and the legal world, because that's just the nature of doing business in our country is you have to uphold the law.
Mm-hmm. And that's worth pointing out. I mean, there are a lot of firms out there that specialize in that just for businesses of all sizes. That you don't necessarily have to have that person giving you legal advice on staff full time, but you might want to have a retainer with a firm that provides those kinds of services. Not necessarily the same guy advertising on the side of the bus for personal injuries, but somebody outside
That's
of,
right.
outside
That's
of
right.
your own operations.
And I think, Mary, that's really important to highlight is the importance of a team, again, because when you go into business, yes, you're starting small, but the goal isn't to end small.
Right.
And often when you're getting started your first year, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months or so, you're going to be so focused on just getting product out, servicing your customers, getting product out, servicing your customers. However, if you're going to scale long-term, different people are going to have to start wearing different hats. You're going to have to get a plant manager. You're going to have to get a payroll manager. You're going to have to get someone to manage inventory if you're going to scale and grow the operations. And again, legal is an important consideration.
All of these hires that come along as you grow, it's something to look forward to. But when you're first starting out, when you are brand spanking new in the business, you don't necessarily have the resources to hire right away on all those things. Does that mean that you just put them aside and don't deal with them? Or do you need a plan?
You absolutely need a plan. And so that's what we're moving into our action plan. So the way that I've encouraged small business owners is to have a 90-day, 180-day, and check in on a quarterly basis and set your priorities. When you wake up in the morning, you can't boil the whole ocean. You can't do that. So you just have to, again, what are the top priorities? Well, if it's developing a quality product and just servicing your first 1 or 2 customers for your first 90 days, like, okay, great. If it's building brand and market awareness and letting folks know, like, hey, we're here. And it really depends on what industry that you're in. If you're going into business and you just want to sell to Walmart, well, your first 90 days, or if you want to sell to City Trends, your first 90 days should be spent around building relationships with that particular customer. If you are trying to acquire 1,000 customers or 2,000 customers, well, then your time and your action plan should be oriented towards marketing and awareness. And again, prioritizing where you're at after the 90-day mark. It's like, okay, great, that's what I did. And this is why it's important to write down, because you can track what went well, what didn't go so well. So then you can course correct your second 90 days. And then you evaluate over 180 days, like, okay, this is going great. All right, I'm going to keep hitting this tree in the same spot. I'm going to keep hitting the same spot because this is working. And then you'll get a lot of clarity once you're already on the journey and once you're already running. And then your action plan will continue to adapt based on what's working and what's not working.
All right, so let's kind of segue a little bit then into a financial plan. And I think that ties in nicely with action plans. You mentioned cash flow a minute ago. How do you lay that out in your business plan?
Yes. So the first place that we have to start is with sales. Right? How are you planning to sell your product? Again, are you going to be the low-cost provider? Or are you going to be a high-cost provider? And that will determine if you're going to go with a higher margin product, or you're going to go with a lower margin product. So if you're going with a lower margin product, that means you need a lot of volume. It means you need a lot of volume. Or if you're selling like automobiles, maybe you only need to sell, 20 a month, to make your break even plan. But if you're selling like little tiny screws, you gotta sell a lot of those screws. So that's how I would break up the income statement, is to start with your revenue projections. Again, who are your customers? Are you going to go consumer to consumer? Are you going to sell into businesses? Business, excuse me. It should be business to consumer, or are you going to go business to business? All right. So that will help with your sales forecast. Okay. How many customers do you need, and how expensive are your different price? Also, the products that you're going to sell. How many products do you have? How are you going to price them? Are they in line with your competitors? Are you more expensive, or are you cheaper than your competitors? And then we want to go into, I think, one of the most important components, especially for our manufacturers, is our input cost or cost of goods sold. So again, how long stress testing and doing research on your core input cost, whether it's aluminum, if it's steel, if it's resin, if it's coffee beans, whatever they may be, is really just understanding how volatile your input costs are and its potential impacts on your margins.
Right.
So that gets us to our gross profit margin, and then from there we want to move into our labor, our sales, our labor to sales ratio. Depending on the industry, some are more labor intensive than others, and you want to compare your labor percentage to sales relative to your competitors and your peers and the leaders in your industry. You want to make sure that you are not overextended on the labor side, and then of course your overhead. So your rent. That's probably our third most expensive item and most important. And as our entrepreneurs are just getting started and we're negotiating with our landlords, it's very critical to understand what you need from the landlord. Do you need the landlord to help you out with tenant improvement budgets? What type of equipment are you going to bring into that business? Are they going to be affixed to the property? Do you want the landlord to split certain costs with you? That's really important to talk about in your business plan, because that lease is going to be with you for whether you sign a 3-year lease, a 5-year lease, or a 10-year lease. It's very important that you put a lot of thought up front into your most important overhead piece. And I'll scoot right along to the summary. Lenders want to see that your forecast has you profitable. Right? Lenders see that your forecast has you profitable, and as you think through your first 90 days, 180 days, 9 months, or 12 months in business, you're going to have a ramp up period in your sales. You're probably going to have a reserve in payroll, because you probably have more folks, because you're trying to figure out what the demand is for your product, and you want to service your first customers really well so that they come back. So generally, some small business owners choose to go a little heavier on the labor component to make sure that their customers are happy with the services that they provide or the products that they provided. And then when you move into year 1 or year 2, you may want to be a bit more conservative on your sales growth target. As a lender, we'll never tell you what your sales growth will do. However, I believe that small business owners should consult with an industry consultant or a peer or a competitor, whether it's a public company or even a sport counselor, to help you think through sales trends in the industry. If you look over the last 5 years, how well did the industry do? Or you can even go back to the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. How did this industry hold up in a downside scenario? And then you can stress test your margins, you can stress test your overhead based on, in the worst case scenario, I can still break even if my sales reach this level. I think that's really important for entrepreneurs to go through that exercise to see if it's a right fit for their family, and to see if all this hard work is worth it at the end of the day. And again, you want to make sure that your forecast is realistic for your lenders, for your investors, and most importantly, for yourself. Is all this hard work worth it?
Right. And that kind of brings 2 points to mind to me. One, just in terms of, you mentioned labor to sales ratio. In that first year, it might just be you in your kitchen or in your garage. making beauty products or designing t-shirts or whatever it is that's lit your fire. And your labor, you might not be getting paid for it right away, but your labor absolutely counts. And is
right.
something that you should not discount in doing your cost benefit analysis to starting a business. The other thing you mentioned that brings to mind the looking at your competitors and what they're doing. One possible source for that, the Securities and Exchange Commission, for any kind of publicly traded company like Citi Trends or many others, we're going to have to file annual reports that have a lot of those business plan kind of elements to them so that our investors know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And if you're looking to break into that industry, that can be a great source for getting an idea of what the current issues in the industry are. It's all up there on the internet. You can go and find out what the people are doing.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And you will be surprised at what some of your local peers, local business owners are willing to share, especially if you bring them a written document. From stories I've heard from other entrepreneurs or business owners, the small business community generally is pretty friendly and ready and willing to assist. And there's so many free resources through the local chambers of commerce, through SCORE, through your local CDFI chapter or organizations that provide a lot of free resources to help you put some real context behind your forecast. And Mary, you brought up the labor to sales ratio, and you're right. That is a great truth. Is that you may be your only you may be the only person working in your business. I'm reminded of the statistics of African American small business owners. So there's 2.6 million African American small business owners in this country, and 96% of them are sole operations. So they are the only employee. So one way, as you're thinking about starting your business, is to factor in your living, your personal expenses and living expenses. And if you are looking to get a micro loan, or you're looking to go to a CDFI, that is a part of the equation that these lenders will factor in. Is how much is your rent? What is your credit card statement, or your automobile or groceries? Just your general living expenses. And we want to make sure that the operations that you're running, the small business, can support a portion of your overhead, your personal overhead.
Right. And I think that kind of segues to our next topic. When you're just starting out, brand new in business, and looking for that first loan, is the bank going to just lend based on the business assets and the business activity, or are you going to need to put some personal stake in it as well?
You're more times than not, a small business owner that's just getting started for the first time is probably going to have to provide a personal guarantee, as well as some initial collateral, depending on the loan request and the size. But for sure, lenders, most micro lenders and small business lenders, are going to look at the borrower's personal credit history.
Okay.
And that plays a significant role in the approval process. Again, the lenders don't have much experience in understanding you as a borrower. We don't know it. We don't know if you've paid back business loans before. So we're going to look to your personal credit, like, okay, well, how consistent have you been in paying your automobile payments? How consistent have you been with certain other personal loans? So that helps provide some comfort and some clarity around who we're giving money to.
Absolutely. So it's comes down a lot to your personal credit history, your personal credit score. Where do you start when you need to find out what's going on with your personal credit? Where's the number one starting place to getting that figured out?
Well, the best place to start is a free government-sponsored website called annualcreditreport.com. That's a really great place to begin, so you can see your credit history and any missed payments that may be out there, or get some areas to really help you focus on your cleanup efforts, or it can affirm that you have strong repayment history.
That's all good news. Does that include a credit score?
Unfortunately, no. Your credit score is not provided. But I do want to highlight that different lenders use different credit bureaus, so it's lender by lender. But what we really want to highlight here is your credit history, and focus on getting anything cleaned up, any demerits or any mispayments, and just so you know the hard-hitting items to focus on in your credit cleanup efforts.
Right. And it's worth noting that they don't always get it right, do they?
No, they don't. No, they don't. And unfortunately, it's your responsibility. It's your credit to make sure you take ownership and fix those things. Right. And there's nuance with our stories. Maybe you moved, maybe there was just a misunderstanding. Someone sent a credit card bill and you weren't there. Things happen in our stories, and that's okay. But we can't just stand by. We have to get proactive and get those things cleaned up.
Mm-hmm. And it's worth just looking and being able to say, okay, I had a rough patch 3 years ago, but look at the last 2 years. Look at what I've done since then. And if you do catch one of those errors in your credit history, it's absolutely worth it to go back and dispute it with the creditor. If you've got the receipts, or if there was some identity theft going on, to get the real story out there, and not to let that ruin your credit for years on end.
That's right. In our CDFI partners, our micro lenders, they're familiar with these efforts, and they're familiar with the stories. And so again, it's not the end of the world if you have a blemish on your credit history. It's good to understand the story, and it's good to show recent performance, better performance. And our micro lenders, they're there to support you and to support these efforts.
Okay. And you've mentioned a couple of times now CDFIs. Can you spell that out for us?
Yes, they are a community development financial institution. And these are government-supported lenders in your community that are able to deploy SBA funds. They have different programs, community advantage funds. They also have the capacity to deliver grants. Some of us may be familiar with the Paycheck Protection Program that was rolled out in 2020. These entities help deploy some of that capital. And these are a great place for folks to go to receive capital support and to learn about the process. Some of the CDFIs are nonprofits, some of them are for-profits, and they are certainly mission-driven to deliver and deploy capital to startups. And at times, they may be a better fit than a traditional bank.
Okay. There's a time and a place for everything. I'm sure there are limits to what CDFIs can do and micro lenders can do.
That's right.
And there's going to be a time when all things go as planned. You step up to the next level.
That's right.
Thank you so much for the information you've given us today on all of that process and what lenders are keeping in their minds as they're reviewing an application. Is there anything else you'd like to add for us?
Absolutely. I believe that Wells Fargo Small Business website has a lot of great resources. I really enjoy, we have a small business plan writing toolkit and template. I encourage you all to check it out. It really prompts you and it spits out an amazing write-up for you. And it really does help you spark questions and answers to questions that you may have missed in your original ideation process. So please check out the resources that Wells Fargo has to offer. They've really bolstered the support over the last 12 months, really 18 months throughout the pandemic. I am so excited for you all, and please reach out to Wells Fargo in your local community for any support that you need getting started. We're happy to serve.
All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been wonderful. We'll look forward to chatting with you hopefully at some future date, and maybe sending some success stories your way.
Absolutely. I can't wait to do it. Congratulations for getting started, team.
Thank you for joining us for this session of the CITIcares Small Business Academy. This presentation has been prepared by City Trends and Seyfarth Shaw for informational purposes only. The material discussed during this webinar should not be construed as legal advice or a legal opinion on any specific facts or circumstances. The content is intended for general information purposes only, and you are urged to consult a lawyer concerning your own situation and any specific legal questions you may have. Please leave any questions or feedback in the comments section below. For more helpful links and more episodes, please visit the CITIcares Small Business Academy YouTube channel.